I thought I could drive a manual car. I've spent thousands of hours in driving games, pulling off things that most drivers could never even try. I even made an entire tutorial on how to drive a manual car like a pro, so clearly driving a real one isn't going to be that hard, right? Guys, I might have messed up. Just for the record, this isn't the outcome of the near money shift that I had during the first time driving this car. It just turns out that having a vehicle in 1,000 pieces in your garage is what owning a 30-year-old vehicle looks like, which honestly wasn't on my bingo card because I'm not really a car guy. But what was it like driving a manual car for the first time with only having gaming experience? Many people told me that I wasn't ready to drive this car. And to be quite honest, I wasn't ready to drive it myself because this wasn't the car of my dreams. I didn't grow up liking vehicles. I didn't like to drive cars. So there wasn't a particular vehicle that I could see myself driving. But after discovering this game called beamng.drived about 3 years ago, I really enjoyed driving a car that was called the Piccolina. Now, every single car in this game is entirely fictional, but if you drive these vehicles, you can get a good idea for what kind of a car you would like to drive in real life. This Piccolina, for example, is rear engine and it's rear-wheel drive. This car also has about 30 to 50 horsepower, which is very similar to the Volkswagen Beetle, and this is the car that I was thinking about getting about 3 years ago, but discovered that a project version of it is about $8,000 to $10,000. And aside from that, it's about 4 to 5 times as much on insurance when comparing it to my Chevy Sonic. So this car was going to be a money pit, and it was completely out of the question. I'm not Mr. Beast. I do not have that kind of money. Mr. Beast, if you are watching this, if you send me $1 million, I will buy 500 Miatas, and I will give them to blind people. I will do incredible things with your money. But yeah, how did I end up with a Miata? I spent about 2 years trying to suppress the desire to get a new car, because I have this car out in the driveway that works perfectly fine, so getting a new vehicle would be a terrible financial decision. And aside from that, time is also a factor, because I have YouTube, work, I enjoy skateboarding, and I like to try playing games without yapping into the microphone, so taking on a new hobby such as driving a vehicle around is going to be rather expensive and something that I probably can't spend the time on doing. But I started to think, what if I were to take my YouTube channel where I do a lot of sim driving stuff in beamng Drive, and I start doing stuff with a real physical vehicle and comparing it to driving in this game that I enjoy so much. That's where things started to kind of make sense, and since then I've been spending a lot of time looking for a car. I had a handful of different cars that I was looking at after playing beamng Drive, such as the ETKI series that had me looking at some BMWs, and the small little compact Miramar that had me thinking about cars like the Z3. But ultimately, I kept on landing on the Miata because I was watching YouTube channels such as Car Mighty and also the Car Passion channel that used beamng Drive themselves to learn how to drive cars in real life. Car Mighty, for example, went from driving and drifting in beamng Drive to drifting a Miata in real life, while the Car Passion channel is doing crazy stuff with his Miatas, such as sticking a dog box into his vehicle and practicing driving it in beamng Drive. But I didn't want to be a copycat and do what they did, but ultimately it's kind of the car that I wanted to get for myself. You probably notice a trend where I tend to like really small and compact cars, things that are kind of simplistic and down to the point, so I spent about 8 months on Facebook Marketplace trying to find an NA or NB Miata, and I kept on finding sellers that had already sold their car. But I came across this one that was $5,000 for a car that had a 75,000 mile engine on the inside of it, and also a body with 200,000 miles. This car was definitely not a looker, but for the price point, it was probably the most mechanically sound thing that I could find. The brake pads, the rotors, the transmission, the differential, which is Torsen based by the way, and also the shocks. Pretty much everything in this car had been gone through within the past few years. So I wanted to jump on this buyer as soon as possible, who answered back and told me that they wanted to make sure that I enjoyed this car first before I bought it. They wanted me to come out and learn how to drive the vehicle because I told them that I had no idea on how to drive a manual car in the first place. And to my surprise, the seller of this car was a retired race car mechanic, and he seemed like he was genuinely trying to find somebody that would take this car up as a hobby. He wanted to find a buyer that would kind of take on the passion that he had. So we set up a time for a driving lesson and to test drive this car, and I spent the entire night prior learning how to drive a car carefully in beamng.drived. And this lesson that I gave myself in this game really helped out whenever I went out to test drive this Miata. Kind of. When I drove this car for the very first time, there were a lot of things that video games had really helped with, but there were some things that I found to be incredibly difficult. The thing I want to talk about first is the clutch, because I think the clutch is what the majority of people struggle with whenever it comes to driving a manual car. So the clutch pedal for a video game is a pedal with a spring behind it. You press on this pedal and the feedback that you get from the game is just the spring. It's not really feedback from the game, it's just a force pressing against your foot. The clutch pedal in a car is essentially going to feel the exact same way because it's kind of just a second-class lever that's pushing into a spring. And if you don't believe it's that simple, I've got my car in a million pieces in my garage. It's the perfect way to kind of look at this. So if we press on this pedal, it's going to be pushing on this rod that's pushing a piston through the master cylinder. So by pushing on that pedal, it's going to be pushing fluid through this master cylinder over into this hydraulic line. And that's going to feed over to a slave cylinder that's going to be bolted to the side of the transmission. Every time you press on the clutch pedal, you're forcing the slave cylinder to push outwards against this clutch fork that's pushing this bearing into a spring diaphragm. Whenever you press on that pedal, you're pressing against this spring. That's what's releasing the clutch pressure plate and allowing your clutch to spin freely, but you're pressing a pedal that is pressing a spring. That is the feeling of the pedal itself. I know I have completely over-explained that, but it's something that took me by surprise, and I think some other people might actually get something from that, but yeah. Bite point filling is not through the clutch pedal, it's through the car pulling forward as the clutch connects. Something that video games had helped me with, once I realized I couldn't feel the bite point through the clutch pedal, is I actually started to listen to the sound of the engine for the bite point. If you play video games, you know that there's not a feeling of motion in the car. You don't feel the car pulling forward, so you kind of train your ears to listen to the sound of the car itself, like you become really in tune with the vehicle through the audio of the car. When I was first learning how to get this car to start rolling from a dead stop, I was really in tune with the sound of the car. I would have my right foot on the brake pedal very lightly, almost as if I was doing a hill start, and I would start to release off the clutch pedal until the engine revs would start to come back. Then I'd swap my right foot over to the throttle pedal, and I would start to release off the clutch pedal with that throttle input. Now, I know this is the incorrect way to get a car rolling on a flat surface, and I used to do this all the time for everything, but I will say that it works really well for hill starts. If you're doing this on a flat surface, probably just use the clutch pedal and the throttle. Don't worry about the brake. If you're practicing how to drive a car in a game, especially if you're practicing in beamng.drived, that's like my most recommended game if you have a computer, but learn how to do stop goes. Stay in a parking lot, stay in first gear, stop the vehicle, get the car to start rolling, stop the vehicle, get the car to start rolling, and just do that over and over again. It helped me a lot whenever it came to driving a real manual. Something else that I've learned about a clutch pedal in a real car is a lot of vehicles from 1990 and forward have a little tiny switch that's behind the clutch pedal. And if these vehicles have this switch, you have to press the clutch pedal all the way in to start the vehicle. It's a safety mechanism that keeps you from starting the car when it's in first gear. I have not played a single game that requires you to press the clutch pedal in to start the car, but these switches are really, really popular in vehicles. The next thing I want to talk about is the feeling of a shifter and how that kind of times with the clutch pedal, because this is something that you can really kind of suck at. If you're driving in a real car, make sure that you have the clutch pedal down and shift into gear before you release off the clutch pedal. I know that sounds like common sense, but If you play in driving games, you likely have gotten into the habit of God shifting, or at least I definitely did, because I would try to throw the car into gear, miss that gear, release off the clutch pedal, and continue just by muscle memory, forcing for that gear. It's not a good thing to do, because you obviously can destroy your transmission, as I was actively doing in that last clip. It won't kill your transmission if you do this, by the way. Like, if you do it once, you're fine. Like, don't panic. But if you keep doing that, it's going to deplete the lifespan of your synchros. It's going to start to destroy your transmission. So try to not do this. Clutch pedal down, make sure that you shift the shifter into gear. Make sure it's in gear, and then release off the clutch pedal as you exchange with the throttle pedal, which is another good point. Make sure you exchange the clutch pedal with the throttle pedal. Do not shift into a higher gear and just drop your clutch pedal. Shift into a higher gear and release your clutch pedal with some throttle inputs. I personally got into the habit of just dropping my clutch pedal after a shift in video games, and it will actually cause you to lurch forward a little bit. You can see this in video games if you pull out like a G-Force app, but other than that, there's no way to really tell this is happening. So in a real car, I was playing some headbanging with the steering wheel, along with my passenger getting thrown into the dashboard. Okay, it wasn't that bad, but you do feel the engine slowing down the car and getting thrown forward in your seat, so utilize that throttle input along with the clutch pedal. Now, next thing I want to talk about is going to be the difference in the feeling of the shifter itself, which sounds kind of ridiculous, but this is the reason why I almost money shifted the car. A shifter in a video game is very binary. I mean, it's mechanical in a sense that you throw around a lever and you mash into some switches, but either you're in first gear or you're not. You're in third gear or you're not. You're in fourth gear or you're not. You're choosing which gear you're in. In a real car, you can of course do this, but if you're going down a highway, say in fourth gear, and you're climbing up on the revs, the car almost doesn't want you to go into third gear. When you hear about people money shifting, it's typically because they're slamming their car into gear. They're forcing the car to go into the gear they want to. They're forcing it to go into fifth gear, but they instead miss that and they go into third gear, which is something that I did during test driving by accident. But I was being careful with the clutch pedal, so as the engine rev started to come up during the test drive, I caught that really quickly. I was like, holy crap, that's almost a money shift, and I pushed in the clutch pedal really quick and put it in the fifth. If you're driving a manual car, do not try to force the car to go into gear. Either the synchros are bad or you're about to money shift the car. You should also not be revving the crap out of your car if you're learning how to drive it in the first place. I think I had this to about 3,500 whenever I shifted into third gear, so it probably would have shot up to about 5,000 and I still would have been safe. But had I been shifting at about 6,000, I'd probably have been pulling the engine. Damn. I promise I didn't kill the car. Just very expensive, life-learned lessons about 30-year-old vehicles and their upkeep, and how I've spent way too much money on something that I have never done before. Never done something beyond changing my own oil, and I'm starting to think of ways to cope, like maybe this is building character. Maybe I could fix it again if something else goes wrong. I know all the parts now. Yeah. If you want to see a future video of why this car is being taken apart in the first place, and if I can put it back together, and if the car will start, subscribe. I'll be making that. And channel members, thank you guys so much, and hopefully see everybody in the next video. I am tired. Bye-bye.